Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We got the Trump campaign on. We're going to ask him about what seemed to us to be pretty ineffective attacks on Joe Biden up to this point and what their strategy is moving forward. We've also got Ryan Grim back on the show. He's going to break down this crazy corruption case that is unfolding in Ohio. But we wanted to start with maybe a shift in approach from the president yesterday.
Yeah, pretty big shift in approach. So the president bringing back the coronavirus briefings, watched by the nation. It was only half an hour, so actually manageable, not the 3-hour ones.
Didn't blow up your whole day.
Marathon sessions that there used to be. I actually sat through the whole thing just to see how it went. I was pretty surprised by the tone. Let's take a listen.
When you can, use the mask. If you're close to each other, if you're in a group, I would put it on when I'm in a group. If I'm in an elevator and there are other people with me, including like security people, it's not their fault. They have to be in the elevator. I want to protect them also. I put on a mask. I have no problem with the masks. I view it this way. Anything that potentially can help, and that certainly can potentially help, is a good thing. I have no problem. I carry it. I wear it. America's youth will act responsibly, and we're asking everybody that when you are not able to socially distance, wear a mask, get a mask. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact, they'll have an effect, and we need everything we can get.
Well, pretty amazing change of tone that you can see there, Krystal.
And how hard was that?
Okay, yeah. First of all, it's like, why did that take 4.5 months, man? Like, there was literally no reason for that. However, I will say, I actually tweeted this in the observation when I was watching it, absent one moment on Ghislaine Maxwell, which we will talk about later.
Of course,
I'm going to save all my outrage and emotions about that, bottle it up inside. However, I was like, if he had had that posture on coronavirus, he'd be up on Biden by 10 points.
I agree.
No question. He came out and he was like, we're taking it seriously. The virus is going to get worse before it gets better. Everybody please wear a mask. He's talking about social distancing, saying, hey, we're also coming with another economic recovery. Please maintain this. We're all going to get through this together. I was like, where has this guy been?
It was almost like
4 months.
He was a normal human being in that moment.
Crazy.
It was weird.
Look, it wasn't his best moment because anytime he's reading off of a script, it's kind of like,
a little stilted. Whatever.
Doesn't matter. Especially when your opponent is Biden, who is also stilted. I mean, remember that moment whenever his prompter broke and he was like, I was like, that's all you got to compete against. It's amazing, but something broke inside of him. I don't know what it is. Something broke amongst his advisors. We've been reading all through the week about how Mark Meadows and all these other people want to downplay the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Something seems to have clicked. I wonder if it was the Chris Wallace interview.
Well, and that's what I was thinking as well. I mean, that interview was so devastating.
So bad.
On essentially every question was devastating. Chris Wallace handled it extremely well, was extremely prepared. And the tone there was such a disaster. It was so widely panned. I do think that was a little bit of like a jolting wake-up call for him, perhaps. We played some of this for you on Monday. Let's just take a listen to the tone from Trump on Sunday versus what we heard yesterday.
But, sir, we have the 7th highest mortality rate in the world. Our mortality rate is higher than Brazil. It's higher than Russia. And the European Union has us on a travel ban.
Yeah, I think what we'll do, we have them on a travel ban too, Chris. I closed them off. If you remember, I was the one that did the European Union very early. But when you talk about mortality rates, I think it's the opposite. I think we have one of the lowest mortality rates in the world. We're going to take a look.
We had 900 deaths on a single day.
We will take a look.
This week.
Ready?
You can check it out.
Could you please get me the mortality rate?
Yeah.
Kaylee's right here. I heard we had one of the lowest, maybe the lowest mortality rate anywhere in the world. You have the numbers, please? Because I heard we had the best mortality rate.
The case data of similarly situated countries, as Dr. Burks points out, and this is
Number one low mortality rate. I hope you show the scenario because it shows what fake news is all about. Okay,
I don't think I'm fake news, but we'll put we'll put our stats on.
You said we had the worst mortality rate in the world, and we have the best.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do not have the best mortality rate. I mean,
we also don't have the worst. We had the 7th.
Right.
It was like number 7. Or
but
whatever. Anyone
looking at this thing, okay, we have about 5% of the world's population, about 25% of the COVID deaths. So you do the math with this thing. Yeah, I really think that was a major shift. And look, we're not trying to give the president too much credit here for saying wear a mask. It's like the lowest bar imaginable. But as we've been saying for so long, honestly, the bar for the American people was very low, right? And so do I I think that just shifting the rhetoric is going to rescue his reelection? No, I don't. I think at this point, he actually has to govern, actually has to get this thing under control, has to have, as Ross Douthat was arguing in the New York Times yesterday, has to actually have some balls bounce in his direction in terms of the virus and the pandemic, lessening in terms of the economy coming back, and potentially in terms of Joe Biden making some mistakes. Like, those things have to come together for him. But do I think this will help him get back in range? Yes, I do. I actually think just the rhetoric, doing nothing else differently, just being a normal human being, reflecting the fact that people are concerned about this and it is impacting their lives every day, I think that the bar is so low that just doing that will at least help.
It's Cuomo model, right? I mean, all you have to do is talk. All you have to do is be like, yeah, take it seriously. Everybody wear a mask. Everybody please, abide by social distancing. It's tough. We'll all get through it together. Okay, I feel a little bit better, right? And it's so annoying because it's like, why did it take 4 months to do this? There's just no reason that you had to crater the economy and crater your own chances at re-election. Now, I think that here's what's going to happen. I think that if he continues to keep this up, if he can keep this up, which is a big if, he'll shrink it to about 5 points over about a month. It's going to take a month. Everybody in America is pretty skeptical right now that Trump is taking it seriously. We've seen one-offs before where he takes something seriously and then has, some sort of incident. We'll see. So I'm not 100% optimistic. But if he can keep up this posture for the next month, you can shrink it to 5. And now if you shrink it to 5, maybe even 6, you shrink it to that, then you're in the Douthat territory where you can have unexpected events which shift things in your direction.
Right.
This is going to be a huge blow to the Biden campaign because I saw the Biden campaign's strategy yesterday. Biden's speech was, he has abandoned you. I will not forget you. Also rhetoric, right? Whenever it comes to that.
Sure.
But devastating rhetoric. Whenever it appears that your opponent doesn't care about the virus. In this situation, when you're doing vis-a-vis that, not as easy to do. He's a sitting president of the United States. It's just harder to beat.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the case because, and look, he's always been good at capturing the nation's attention even before he was the president of the United States. So now if he could add to the day's rhetoric, which you were very right to point out is just one day at this point, if he can add to that a consistent track record of not being an insane person, if he can add to that some actual actions that make people feel like he is doing something and start to see the virus abate, then you start to be in range of being able to pull this thing off. I mean, let's just remember where we are right now. This is according to the latest Fox News poll, which is not the worst of his positioning at this point, but it has Biden up about 8 points. That's within range of what a lot of the polling shows. The average overall is around 9 points, I think, at this point of a national Biden lead. Biden also has been leading in all of the key swing states and even putting states like Texas into play. Ohio, I saw a poll out yesterday, which is not a state that Biden needs to win. He's up right now in the latest polling in Ohio, so in a very commanding position. But yeah, look, it's still the case that the Electoral College potentially benefits President Trump. So he doesn't have to win the popular vote, but he can only lose it by a couple points and pull off what he pulled off last time. So the other part of what appears to be his strategy, which we also covered here yesterday, because yesterday we saw some of the signs of this coming. We saw him tweet out something about masks. We saw him say that he's going to do the coronavirus briefing. And then the other piece of this seems to be he wants to project this law and order image. And part of what he's doing there, which I find to be horrific, abhorrent, and very much over the objections of local officials, is send in these federal agents. He's already done it in Portland. He's talking about doing it in Chicago and other places. I think that will very much backfire in the same way that Lafayette Square Park did, because it doesn't seem like law and order. It seems like sowing more chaos. And on top of that, the other piece that he added yesterday, which was juice for the base, was this memorandum aiming to bar undocumented immigrants from being counted in the census. Now, this is very unlikely to pass legal muster. It is very much goes against what the court has said in the past. It appears to be unconstitutional. Why does this matter? Because what the census says for your town, your locality, et cetera, it is necessary for in terms of political representation. It also determines what kind of funding you get into your local community. And everybody you don't get to pick and choose who you count, right? Everybody who's in the locality gets counted. That's just the way that works. But it also, and Saagar, this is something that you've talked a lot about here, it also harkens back to their failure to change a question on the census about whether or not you are a citizen of the country.
Yeah, that's right. See, what I'm really observing is that they have taken all of the right-wing criticism to heart and are trying to cram as much of it into the last couple of months ahead of the election. So like with the local law enforcement, heavily criticized from me, many others, for not actually bringing real law and order to many American cities, but doing it in a ham-fisted way, the unmarked federal agents, right? I mean, why don't you just put a uniform on? And then I have no problem with it, and many others don't as well. Poll the country, I bet they would support it. Now, the same thing whenever we come to the census. The census decision, widely supported by the American public, and it was polled at the time. But guess what happened? The Commerce Department, in the same way that they did with DACA, Wilbur Ross and them lied, basically lied to the court about their justification for why they wanted to change this question on the census about undocumented immigrants, right? And then they got caught lying about it based on the emails that they had sent within their own agency. And what outraged me at the time, because I fully support this, and I don't think that illegal immigrants should get political representation in Congress, is that what ended up happening is that they lost at the Supreme Court on the Administrative Procedures Act the exact same way that they lost on DACA, because it was complete idiocy when it came to their lawyers. So now, after taking and internalizing all of this criticism, what are they doing? They're like, oh, well, let's just sign this executive order so they can get this splashy headline. There's no way this thing is going to pass constitutional muster because, as you said, it needs to be litigated, and it will 100% get smacked down by the court because it's the same thing. It does not abide by any of the... This is totally within their legal rights to do, 100%. But they had to do it, I don't know, 3 years ago, and they had to do it properly.
And
that is the thing that really annoys me about it.
And I mean, the incompetence is the real point here.
Yeah,
and then the political, like, let's just pretend like we're doing this thing that we didn't actually manage to pull off that, you know, that the base wants us to do. And this is not a position, obviously, that I support. But the problem with the census question as it went to the Supreme Court was that you can't just base it on, like, we want to not count undocumented immigrants. They had to have a legitimate reason. They were trying to make the public case that by gathering this information about citizenship, they were going to get actually a more accurate count and more accurate information. Whereas behind the scenes, the true intent, which was we don't want to count undocumented immigrants, was what actually came out. And so that's the issue here, is you can't, and this is like the legal question, you can't choose who you want to count. There's another issue that, you know, that progressives like myself care about with regards to the census and political apportionment, which is you have prison populations which are counted in a lot and disproportionately in like southern rural areas that, you know, juice up their political representation, but you've got a group of people who are banned from voting. So these issues are important and matter a lot and are not straightforward, but the justification cannot be like, we want to help our side politically win and we don't want to count these people. However, again, this is part of like their political strategy. At this point, it's certainly not enough to work. But at least on the coronavirus stuff, will it start to help just having some normal rhetoric out of the White House? I think it'll start to help. I think it'll, when he was doing briefings before, even though they were insane oftentimes and not his best look, just the fact that he was doing them improved his approval ratings.
In the beginning. And it started to taper off.
Yeah.
And that's the worry I have.
And that's part of the problem is like, it's so late in the process now that while at the beginning, just showing that leadership, the Cuomo model, as we've discussed here, may have been enough. At this point, it's not enough. You've got to actually handle this thing. You've actually got to get it under control so that people can feel some sense of safety and normalcy in their life.
That's the real issue he has, is that he squandered so much of the country's goodwill over 4 months. I mean, you can't underestimate how much, when you lose that, so hard to get it back. Like I said, I mean, I think the race will narrow. It was already naturally going to narrow the sooner that you get to the election. But this could help it get within the margins, but he's still at the mercy of events. And that's just not a place that you want to be. That's where Biden has been, and that's why he's been up. But Trump was in the driver's seat in a way that, you know, he's a sitting president of the United States. He could have won this thing clean with 10, 15-point margin with 80% approval rating. He could have had W 9/11 levels of approval. And just like W, squandered it all on something which the country didn't want and possibly could destroy us for generations. So
indeed.
We'll see.
All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.